We have about half an hour. We could maybe take 3, 4 questions.
It's about Buddhism, impermanence. There's no timelessness, yeah?
Okay. I had one question, but we can add a few. And you partly started answering it, what the Indian government should do. What can we do? Those of us in this room. Yeah, that was mine. But yeah, your question. And then keep your hands up. I'll come to you.
Ramananda Gupta from Stat News Global. I have three very quick questions. One, how long does this entire process of identifying the next Dalai Lama usually take? All this divination, and it seems like a very complicated process. The second one is that since we're talking about the Americans having come in this, do people still remember that the Americans had done the SP circus and other circus where they funded the uprising against the funded guerrillas, the trained guerrillas against the Chinese. And then they abruptly stopped because they wanted to get cozy with the Chinese government. So have people forgotten that, or is American thing that important even now?
As far as reincarnation is concerned, you use the word, it's complicated, right? But for Tibetans, it's not complicated. For 800 years, we've been practicing this. We have nailed it, right? So we know how it works. It's very simple. Regent, search committee, selection committee, finding committee, enthronement. So we know it's 100 years old, well-oiled system that we have. Normally, it takes anywhere from 3 to 6 years, because after someone dies, one has to be reborn. And then, of course, that person should be able to walk and identify things. So if you read His Holiness' biography, My Land and My People, there is a chapter dedicated to his finding. Very moving account. So 3 to 6 years normally, generally. But in some exception, it could go to up to 10 years. But normally 3 to 6 years.
Charge in that
Regent, appointed by His Holiness. Now, in the case of other lamas, there will be someone designated. So that's how the process goes. Now, as far as, yes, CIA helping and America abandoning us, we all know that. So when it comes to freedom movement, we are the veterans. We've been here for 60 years. We have had roller coaster experience. We go up and we go down. Someone abandons you and then embrace you. But anytime someone embraces you, we feel the warmth. When someone abandons you, we are Buddhists, we are follower of Dalai Lama, we show compassion towards them. It's okay, you want to be friendly with China for the time being. We understand, It's true, but it's true. Yes, Kissinger went, and ping-pong diplomacy, Nixon went, normalized relationship with China to counter Soviets, right? And then they abandoned us, and some of them were my uncle. My uncle was trained. Recently, they found the exact spot in Came Hell where they were trained, and they had this major ceremony as well. And they were trained and airdropped, and after several airdrops, my late uncle didn't even come back, right? In fact, there's a movie being made soon to come, if you're interested. So we know how America functions, right? Generally, we know how realpolitik is, right? International relations. Everybody works for their own national interests. So when their national interests coincide with ours, we welcome them. When it doesn't, we are compassionate. Yeah.
2 questions, yes. 3.
I can tell you another story. During my Sikyong for 10 years, I was not allowed to enter the State Department White House for 10 years. I had to meet everybody outside. So I used to make 3 or 4 trips a year to Washington, D.C. Now, if you're rejected 30 or 40 times, what would you do? We are Tibetans, we don't give up. I kept going, and finally in November of 2020, I entered the State Department, and December of 2020, I entered the White House. And when we passed the law, I put a provision saying CTA reflects and represents Tibetans diaspora, and Sikyong is the president of CTA. Now, officially, American law has acknowledged CTA and Sikyong. Now my successor can enter the State Department without any bureaucrat saying, oh, Kissinger and Nixon, stop this, and you can't enter. We beat Kissinger and Nixon with that law. But after 30, 40 trips, so Tibetans, we are from the mountains. पहाड़ी है, चरने के लिए मुसीबत नहीं सोचते हम लोग.
Yesterday, Nancy Pelosi made a very bold statement in Dharamshala where she said that while the Dalai Lama's legacy will go on and he'll always be remembered. Xi Jinping will be forgotten and he will just pass his time. And she also said that maybe the Dalai Lama may not approve of this, but she still said it. And within 24 hours, we saw that the delegation went and met the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister also tweeted about it. Uh, the social media was abuzz with criticism that how could India lend its soil to such a statement from US lawmakers? Uh, should we infer that the Indian government not only just expected it, but also endorsed the statement, which is like almost a slap on Xi Jinping?
Leader Nancy Pelosi is right. His Holiness' legacy will live on and Xi Jinping will die. No one remember. Because again, as a Buddhist, we believe in impermanence. All the dictators will die. Right? And it's the historical fact that in 20th century, 8 empires collapse. Right? In 21st century, 8 empires will come and collapse. I mean, that's a fact. Okay. So as a Buddhist, we believe in impermanence. We just have to wait and survive. And our turn will come. That's law of karma. So Nancy Pelosi is absolutely right. And His Holiness will be forever remembered, all over the world, He is essentially the living, walking Buddha of this century, last century, this century. It's a fact, for us. And then, yes, he has survived Mao Zedong, Zhou Enlai, you just name it, Deng Xiaoping, and, Cheng Zemin, include Hu Jintao, right? So he has outlived all of them. So again, for the Chinese government, you cannot find a better partner than His Holiness, who is reasonable, rational, compassionate. If you want to solve the issue of Tibet, he is the best person you have. So he is an asset. He is a partner if you want him to be. But then if you, criticize for what Nancy Pelosi is saying and meeting with His Holiness Dalai Lama, it just shows their pettiness, It just shows that it's kind of paranoia that, any small meeting, you have to issue a statement. So that reflects their paranoia when it comes to His Holiness Dalai Lama and Tibet issue. It's only on Tibet they have issued 13 white papers, not on Xinjiang or Hong Kong or Inner Mongolia. Only on Tibet, 13 white papers. Why? Thanks to India, we are here in Dharamsala, but then Chinese government feels it so strongly. And then Prime Minister Modi ji meeting, as I said, it's directly or indirectly, it's solidarity. And then you can have different varieties of meeting, but official, publicized, with smiles and shaking hands and tweeting about it. It's a symbolically, and then first meet with His Holiness Dalai Lama and come down to meet with, and welcome them in Delhi. It's a positive indication.
Can we take 2 questions together since you're sitting next to each other? Yes, please.
Mr. Lobsang, with due respect and to Dalai Lama, I will talk in very plain language. Till recently, USA was just consistently following China dictation. Whenever Dalai Lama was in US, he was not allowed to even to have any welcome in White House or any other part of the USA. He was non grata. And it is the India who has been supporting Dalai Lama since 59 for the last 60 years, and because of that, China attacked India also. So I think India is the only country who is very much supporting the Tibetan cause, and India will be the first country to recognize as a Tibet a free country. So I think we should not forget this Indian contribution to Tibet cause. And the way USA is playing its rhetorics is because of recent ongoing in Russia and Israel, and so many things are happening, and China is also one of the player in this whole. So we should also not forget this compulsion of USA, the way it's going to global politics. Your comments, please.
Mr. Khan.
I'm Vijay Kartik. My question is, Lobsang Sangay, there has been a tradition, as you also explained, that after one Dalai Lama's demise, the next is found out as a child of 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. And till the child becomes an adult, only then he takes over his role in the national his position. I see there is a 18 years, at least 18 years of holiday. Do you think Tibet can afford this 18 years of holiday? It could happen in Tibet. Maybe in those days it was possible. Is it possible? Is it desirable?
First of all, two statements which are already made. Number one, His Holiness is very healthy. He has, promised to live for more than 100 years, and we pray that he will live, and we do believe he will live, right? So, as I said, my presentation today is about His Holiness issued a statement in 2011, and I'm explaining his statement and supporting his statement based on facts, historical facts and other empirical facts. And then I'm commenting or criticizing, countering the Chinese propaganda. So that's the gist of my presentation. Now, again, I also started by saying no one has done more to Tibetans than India. India has done the most, Indian people has been the most hospitable. The fact that we are here, we have a government exile, we can come to Delhi and talk about it because of India and Indian people. So, Hamara Bharat Mahan hai. Just to acknowledge that. But we want more allies. America aayega, we welcome them. Europe aayega, welcome them. Japan aayega, Korea aayega, Cambodia, Laos, jo bhi aayenge, we welcome them. Because we need more help. So you must think them as allies. Now, you're also right, yes. When they will abandon you, when they will you never know. That is also, as I said, we've been here for 60 years. We have seen all kinds of experiences, right? So we will not be what you call swayed by one action or the other. Having said that, as His Holiness says, make new friends, but always remember old friends. The oldest and the best is India for us. But we will keep making new friends, including the US. So that's how we perceive it. Now, His Holiness the Lama, again, if you look at past history from 1 to 14, as I said, yes, there is a gap. Enthronement at the age of 5 or 6, but then the political takeover at the age of 18 or 21. That's a reality. That's when we are actually vulnerable. So that's why, as per His Holiness' vision, he wanted to democratize Tibetan community exile. Democracy was introduced, and then the fact he devolved his political authority. And then, so this democratic movement to carry forward the political aspect of the movement. So he's sharing load. And then I just happened to be elected in 2011 when His Holiness separated the church and the state, so to speak, devolved all his political authority. I shouldered my responsibility as much as I could, and I survived for 10 years. I have passed on the baton. Having said that, Tibetan community is no different from any other community, right? So we'll have issues, In fact, I'm writing a book on how to set up and run democratic government exile. Because I did my PhD or doctorate dissertation on comparative government exiles. And then I ran government exile for 10 years. So I'm writing a book and 5 chapters have come. And then I started talking about it. And then now a lot of people, and then again, it's a fact. If you compare to all the government exiles or the claimants in the world now, Tibetan government exile is the best, most effective, more efficiently, most frugally run government anywhere, compared to anywhere in the world. So India should be proud because your success is our success. If you really care for made in India, Tibetan government exile is very much made in India, okay?
There are 5 hands, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6, and that might be all we have time for.
Dr. Sangay, I'll begin by complimenting you for a very, very educative presentation on the reincarnation. My 2 questions, very short one. One is that you have mentioned in the course of presentation that there is almost unanimous endorsement by the Tibetan Buddhist community that the steps which have been followed in selecting the Lama. So what is holding up from going ahead and following those steps, number 1? Number 2 question is that if that is done, what can China do? What is the threat China is, trying to, meet out, if that is done, but I don't see any threat coming from China. What can they do really? Because whatever they have to do, they have already been doing.
His Holiness has stated clearly that he will declare his thinking at the age of 90. So first he has to declare. Then all the other steps will come. Again, the 7 steps, as I mentioned, this is in practice for 800 years in all the lamas. We know the system very well. So yes, for outsiders, they might say it's also esoteric, complicated. What is this? But through my presentation, I just want to make it very clear that we Tibetans know. Not only His Holiness Dalai Lama and Panchen Lama and Karmapa and others, we have like several hundred, maybe a few thousand lamas, okay? We have the selection process. We do it very well. Now, what am I worried about? On the one hand, no. Now, if world is fair, right? If people can decide black and white, just and unjust, then we are not worried. But the world is gray area. The Chinese propaganda is such that I gave you an example of Indian newspapers, writing same headlines on same day and running it without even asking Tibetan government exile or His Holiness office when he had already issued a statement in 2011, right here in India. If we make that kind of, I don't want to say mistake, we overlook that kind of narrative, then imagine, right, all the small countries, even Buddhist countries, how much pressure they will come under. And we can't reach out to 200 countries. Chinese propaganda, whether it's Global Times or CCTV is very popular in Africa. It's more popular than some say BBC and CNN, right? CGTN, Chinese government television network. If you look at their Facebook account, they have 136 subscribers, 36 million subscribers. That's more than Al Jazeera, BBC, CNN, and NBC combined. So through this, information channel, they can mislead people. So that's why I'm here speaking. I've spoken in America and Europe, and here because we have to share our narrative. And if we can do that, then people see it black and white. Then whatever they do, it doesn't make any difference. But if you don't speak out, make it clear, many people will be misled. So that's the worry. Yeah.
So there are a number of reports which suggest that the Chinese are forcing young Tibetans, 13 years old, 14 years old, to undergo military training. And very recently, in the Khamwa County, there have been reports that the Tibetans are being induced to join the PLA. Even the age limit has been increased. Now, are these accurate? And if they are, these efforts, how successful have they been?
Now I'm not in an official position, because in my official position, I can comment on some issues like tutu or things like that. Now I'm not in my official position, so I can make semi-comment and hope you can deduct what I'm trying to say, So we have Doklam happened, right? And then Galwan happened. The Chinese troops actually moved in and took higher, mountains. So they have strategic advantage. And people of Tibetan heritage took the highest point, and it became a news, right? It became a news. Yes, people of Tibetan heritage sacrificed and contributed, took over high mountains, and that forced the Chinese army to negotiate and then pull back. I think whether it's fully documented or not, I think Tibetan contribution should be acknowledged. It's a fact. And after that, then the news media from China also started coming out. So we are also recruiting Tibetans. We are inducing them. We will have our own battalion and all that, right? So, but then I doubt if there is actually a war. I doubt the Chinese officer will dare to send Tibetan forces to the border because they might just cross over and come to India, So the trust level is very low. It's a joke, but also true, that Beijing calls Lhasa and said, how many people do we have in the Communist Party of Tibet, that you truly trust? Oh, we can't fill a telephone booth if you actually have to do this. Now, this is part joke, but fact. Chokhang is the holiest temple in Tibet, right? And there are around 100 monks. Because it's so holy that these monks are paid by the government, screened meticulously and selected, and they're paid. That means they are, among the monks all over Tibet, they can be the most scrutinized, screened monk and paid by the Communist Party of China. Okay. Now in 2008, nationwide protests happened. Remember, pre-Olympics, nationwide protests happened. And the Chinese government thought we should counter this propaganda. What do we do? What do we do? And they start blaming Dalai Lama. Say, oh, it's the Dalai Lama, and split is Dalai clique, and Tibetan government exile. So that was the narrative. And they took journalists to Lhasa, to Chokang Temple, and have all these cameras. You can still have YouTube, right? And have these monks come out and, of course, this is the, select monks that they have, paid monks. And they came out wailing and crying. They said, it's not Dalai Lama. It's not Dalai Lama. It's Chinese government's fault. Can you imagine? They just barely meticulously screened and selected 100 monks who are paid. At the time, crucial time, they spoke for Tibetan people, for His Holiness Dalai Lama. So then how many troops, actually Tibetan troops that they get and then, come to the mountains? So I think they will be sorely disappointed. Having said that, Tibetans in Tibet, they have to find employment. They have to make a living. And wherever there are jobs, they will apply. And then, they will be recruited.
So, Lobsang, currently we can say that Tibetan political movement is based on politics of culture and identity. But if and when Tibet becomes free, do you see any clash in the vision of CTA, Tibetan diaspora, or the local Tibetans in China, or in Tibet?
Thanks for correcting. In Tibet, yeah. But again, as per His Holiness' vision, he has made it very clear, because I'm writing a book and giving workshop, I was told you about. Venezuelans, I'm giving the Uyghurs and Azerbaijan and Cambodians and Hong Kongers, I'm giving workshop to many of these groups. They all want me to. And one thing, common fact that you'll find is that exiled people are very disunited, right? And they face 10 different challenges. One challenge is the vision and the reality of people back home and in exile. And exiled people think we are struggling, we are fighting for freedom. But people back home will say, generally everywhere, not just Tibetans, we are here, we are suffering, we suffered the most. If independence or freedom or democracy happens, they will say, you are in exile, right? You lived a comfortable life, So our vision, expectation is different, we have more say. So that, challenge is a major challenge. But His Holiness Dalai Lama has made it very clear in 1993. The day Tibet issue is resolved, CTA will be dissolved. Tibetans in exile will return as ordinary Tibetans. So I became Sikyong, or the president of Tibetan government exile, with no vision or expectation that I would become the president of Tibet. Not at all. His Holiness said it in 1993, we all follow that. So it is, we are working, we are the spokesperson for Tibetans in Tibet. Once Tibet issue is resolved, majority are in Tibet, they will determine the future. If we could be of any help, we will play a supporting role. So it's being made very clear. So again, that's the far-sighted vision that His Holiness had as early as 1993.
And that might be all we have time for.
How do you assimilate the process of having already selected a successor that was kidnapped and hasn't returned? Because many Tibetans say the process has started. How do we start the process again? Because this is a gap. Unless we know how it concludes, there can't be a new process.
Thank you very much for the question. Again, your question is very good, but it reflects the information gap. You're talking about Panchen Lama. So in after Panchen Lama died, His Holiness endorsed a candidate of Panchen Lama, not recognized. Okay, it's very important. It's the Tashi Lumpo committee established by the Chinese government, and they went and formed the search committee, everything, and they finally found the candidate, and they sent the name to His Holiness Dalai Lama. He said, yes, your candidate is the valid one. That's how Panchen Lama was endorsed, not recognized, endorsed. But then he was kidnapped. He disappeared. It's been 30 years. No one knows where he is, right? And in his place, they have appointed another one who spends more time in Beijing than in his place in the Tashlumpa monastery. But that's Panchen Lama. Panchen Lama has nothing to do with Dalai Lama. They are two different figures. So, I mean, you can clearly see right here in India, there's confusion, right? What is Panchen Lama? So people get, confused by this story. So this is very important. Now, Panchen Lama, so what they have done is, now what the Chinese government say, it's like, it's real karma, okay? They say, Panchen Lama has a big role to play in selecting the Dalai Lama. And yes, they have been teacher and disciple, it's true. The Dalai Lamas were always selected by the regent of Tibet. Okay, Panchen Lama comes at the end and says, yes, I endorse this candidate. The endorsement is just a validation, not the selection or the finding of them. So that we must make the distinction. Now, when His Holiness Dalai Lama declared that boy as Gendun Chökyi as Panchen Lama, had the Chinese government being smart, they are not smart. They say, okay, we take this as Panchen Lama, and we have him in your possession, we'll keep him. And when this time comes, the next Dalai Lama, yes, Dalai Lama is recognized, Panchen Lama is here. He will lead the proceeding and he will select the Dalai Lama. And Tibetan people around the world, and include everybody said, that's a valid fact, that's a valid thing to do, right? And Chinese government is not interfering. It is the Dalai Lama's endorsed Panchen Lama is selecting the next Dalai Lama. They made a blunder. They kidnapped the one endorsed by His Holiness, and they appointed the one, a fake one. Now, how can they use the fake one to, select the next Dalai Lama, right? So it's just karmic. There was an opportunity. Now they're going to bring a fake one. They say, you're bringing a fake one to choose a fake one, right? So that's our Panchen Lama. Again, it's just karmic. When His Holiness made the announcement, many people had this doubt. They said, oh, maybe did we do right or wrong? Panchen Lama has disappeared, right? Now, at the larger scheme of things, I think, politically speaking, it's right.
With China being a superpower and also a permanent member of the Security Council, and for us Tibetans living in exile, and also with the geopolitics concerned with Tibet and His Holiness going on a large scale, how would you regard the changing geopolitics for the upcoming generation of Tibetans, and also for Tibetans and Tibetans in exile who have relatives in Tibet and who are scared of, presenting to the media about the various atrocities faced, various atrocities like the political repression, the economic marginalization, the cultural assimilation, and the environmental destruction. All of these, how would you, advise the younger generation to still tackle the scaredness of their relatives getting affected in Tibet, and yet being in exile and working for Tibet's cause? How would you advise the younger generation? Because for college kids like us, we have a lot of identity crisis at the same time. And at the same time, we still feel like because of the changing geopolitics, changing geoeconomics, changing geostrategies, we're so helpless even on an individual level. So I would like to ask the kind of advices you would give, being a leader.
I'm more academic now. Now, identity crisis is because if you're confused, then you will have crisis, right? But if you're not confused, we are Buddhists, we are Tibetan. I always think like that, right? I'll wake up as a Tibetan, I'll sleep as a Tibetan, I'll die as a Tibetan. And the middle years, I was born in India, I love India, I like dosa, I like biryani, and momo is more popular than any of this other food, yes or no, right? So we have created more jobs, by bringing momo in India than the youth employment projects, okay? It's also a fact. So you must have this clarity. Right? And I always say, even in America, the youth always ask me, who am I? I'm a Tibetan or American or European. I said, no, you are a Tibetan first. So you should integrate into Indian system, but you should not assimilate into Indian system. Meaning you should love Bollywood. You should love all the food, be grateful and get jobs. But you wake up and you sleep as a Tibetan. Your heart should be Tibetan, but be grateful of everything that you have, whether in Europe or in India or America. Look at, if you read British leaders' commentary, who's this guy with a dhoti, who will fall? He led, and India got independence. And it's never a linear progression. Everybody says that. or the younger generation are losing, getting assimilated, losing identity, and you will disappear. India took 250 years or 700 years, if you take Mughal, right? 10 generation of Indians lost out. They fought in between. But the final generation woke up. There was a core, and then won independence. So you might be that generation who lead, not our generation, your generation, you know. So that's how you should perceive things.
Last question.
Yeah, visit. And my question is, I understand that the U.S. in your eyes is a fickle ally.
Not fickle. Generally good. I entered the State Department. Sometimes, yeah, ping pong, you know, yes.
And so the question I wanted to ask you, so, you know, I sort of noticed that.
I'm going back. I don't want immigration officers to stop me at New York Airport Hospital. Yeah.
This is going into a story. So I guess my question is, you know, people, lawmakers like Nancy Pelosi, Jim McGovern, they visited the Dalai Lama before. They had offered.
Yeah, I was the host at that time.
They've offered sort of similar comments of support, but I would argue that perhaps it wasn't as perhaps direct, strong. And one thing I noticed is that while they talked about the human rights situation, the religious freedom situation in Tibet, they didn't use the words self-determination. And I wonder if that word has been sort of jumped out at you as a significant, you know, as something significant coming from U.S. lawmakers, and if you think that it may eventually come out of the mouths of the executive branch.
Yeah, I fought with State Department. As I said, why I could not enter the State Department for 10 years is, you know, there's one section, you know, EAP, and, you know, they always say, no, you can't come in because there's no protocol, president, things like that. And they always start with, U.S. policy is that Tibet is part of China. Having said that, now we respect cultural, religious, linguistic rights of Tibetan people, you know. We really, literally have to fight. And finally, congressmen, many of them start writing to State Department, you can't say that, right? And we got rid of that language. And then if you have noticed the last 3 years, they don't say that anymore. State Department spokesperson, they don't start with Tibet is part of China, but we got rid of that. Now this time in this bill, yes, it says clearly, historically Tibet was independent. And based on international law, Tibet could, you know, deserve self-determination. So this is, on the one hand, progression. On the other hand, reality, right? Tibet was an independent country, you know. There's a similar agreement, you know. We signed treaty with China in the 9th century. And when Nepal applied for UN membership, they listed 8 things, and Tibet was number 1 or 2, saying our treaty relationship with Tibet. So we have all these facts. So yes, you are right. Now the State Department, once this bill is passed, and hopefully President Biden signs it on His Holiness' birthday, which is next month, it will be a very good gift, you know, for His Holiness, and it becomes a law. And then they say, yes, there be a dialogue. So this is a very strong statement. Whenever you have, again, Nancy Pelosi, I've known her, I've met her many times. Given a choice, she would say everything that we want to hear. But then whenever they make foreign trip, they have to get the memos from State Department, right? What you can say, what you cannot say. But she's very brave, and we are very grateful to have a leader like her. And you know, McGovern is a friend of mine, in fact, you know. This time the Republican, you know, Michael McCall to come here. This is bipartisan. Very strong statement for Tibetans, yeah. So if you talk about America high and low, we are the high. Quote me that, okay? I don't want Washington Post quoting me, an immigration officer looking at my name and saying, is this your quote? Yeah.
One of my students is here, and I just want to end on, I mean, you said what the Indian Parliament could do. What can ordinary Indians do? What can we do better?
Please enjoy momos, but remember, it's Tibetan food, right? And then think about Tibet, read about Tibet, write about Tibet, talk about Tibet, you know, basic thing. And then you can look at tibet.net, our official website is, right? So, and then, you know, you keep reading about it, more informed you are, more spokesperson, and you can inform others better. So that's the basic thing. And then, you know, you can, if this is Delhi and ISC, you know, ISC membership is not that easy unless you are well connected. So if you know, MEA, level, secretary and joint secretary. We have so many ambassadors here, nudge them a bit. And sometimes, off the cuff, they can say, in my personal opinion, Tibetan deserves better, right? On reincarnation as well, India can say very simply, India never interferes in any religious matter. Yes or no? Temple, Sankaracharya, how they are selected is for 5,000 years. They select their own Shankaracharyas and their own leaders, and the kings and the governments have always respected that. This is 5,000 years of practice, and we respect the same thing as far as Tibetans are concerned. So there is a historical precedent for India to say that. Or if you don't want to say anything, you can say, His Sovereignty is an honored guest, and he's a wise man. Whatever he decides is his decision, and Indian government has always supported that. So even that level of statement will go a long way, because people do look at, whenever I go to DC and they say, how is India treating you? We want to know. That's where you are. Do you have any trouble? I always be saying, no, India has done the most. There's no formal recognition, but practically more than formal recognition, the fact that we can function here, we have a parliament, we have, everything that's going on in India. It's because of the greatness of this country. So you are our best allies, really heart to heart. Whether I go to wherever around the world, when I meet an Indian person, they look at me as my brother, a sibling. Generally, automatically there's empathy, right? And then, and then you feel very close, and then you start sharing, what's in your heart. So that's, Indian for us. Even in Toronto, we have like 15 Tibetan restaurants, and 90% of the clients are all Indians and South Asians. So thank you for that business as well, And then I just want to end by saying that China has established boarding schools. 1 million Tibetan children from villages and nomadic areas are taken away and put them in boarding schools. If you watch video and Jallo, the expert, talk about it, literally they cut you off from the family, and they brainwash you into thinking you are Chinese. Your culture is backward. Your parents thinking is primitive and outdated, Million children. So now the point is, as I said, Panchen Lama submitted 70,000 characters in 1962. Destroyed 99% of monasteries and nunneries. 99.9% of monks and nuns were disrobed. And historic artifacts, 80% have completely disappeared. What happened? We have come back. Buddhism is flourishing in Tibet, in personal space. They have built with 20,000 monks and nuns. Now again, destruction is taking place. But they will never succeed. They can take our children, but Tibetan gene, Tibetan blood, our sense of identity. 2,500 years old, Buddhism. We are old, we are rich. Communism is 100 years old. Bachcha. In the competition, we will win. And then we also, Tibetans, we are rugged people. We moved to 4,000 meters high level after we managed to grow barley and yaks. Can you imagine? We didn't live in 1,000 meters. We went all the way to 4,000 meters. Now, if you go to Europe, everywhere 4,000 meters, they don't even have a mountain as high as 4,000. That's where we live. So, we are rugged. We believe in ourselves. So first, for freedom, any freedom struggle, you have to believe in yourself. And then our job is actually quite simple. We just need to survive. Empires come and go. You survive. When your time comes, you take over. So they are trying to do that, sending million children to boarding schools, but they will not succeed because we'll keep fighting back. And we will succeed from the land of India. And when we do that, all of you who want to go to Mount Kailash, you didn't have to take long route, okay? Take the shortcut. Because famously, the Tibetan finance minister, Shagaba, said, he wrote a letter to government of India. India should come and help us now. Remember, you barely have 80 soldiers guarding 2,500 kilometers long border, only 80. Itna trust tha. Only 80, can you imagine? You will pay a price if you don't come and support us. Now India is spending $80 billion a year on defense. Now over 60 years, imagine, with that money, have you invested in infrastructure? Nitin Gadkari would have quadruple highways. Yes or no? Have you invested in education? There would have been 10,000 IITs and IIMs. You spend so much money on defense. You have less number of IITs, IIMs, and highways and airports, all these things. India could have an advanced country 30 years ago, ahead of China, because of that border, because of Tibet. So Tibet issue is very much Indian issue. Hamro jure hue, territorially, land-wise, but spiritually also, historically also. We will succeed, and you will succeed. Our success will be together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for being such an engaged audience, and thank you IIC for having us. Thanks.
It was wonderful, wonderful speech. Thank you very much. Sure.